Well, we made it. Somehow, despite all the delays and issues and personal problems and weather and a few attempted assassinations, we've survived and made it to episode 40 for the second review episode. You know, now that I think about it, maybe those time-traveling assassins were trying to stop us for a reason. Anyways, that means it's time for a review episode again. Which means it's time for us to go backwards in time and discuss all the cool and weird episodes we've talked about so far on this episode of Why Are You Talking About This, Nerd? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Waytat Nerd. I am your host, William, and I will be your actually on myself this episode. So if you have actuallys, can it. Just kidding. Keep sending emails because it makes the dopamine flow. Speaking of flowing dopamine, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to have my voice pounding through your head like the footsteps of the dreaded neckbeard entering the comic book shop. Hide your anime figurines. But before we go to the show, I just want to remind everyone that I will be taking my break after this episode comes out. I am very much in need of it, and am super grateful to all of you. Make sure to keep sharing the show, and I'll be trying to get some stuff out and worked on, and by the time I come back, I should have that and some new episodes. The other thing I wanted to work on was like some ads, so I'm excited about that because then I can get the word out more and try to grow the show. Not because I want to fill your spam folders with my shit. Although that would also be nice. On to the show. Okay, so like Waytat, but more, we're not going to do update stories. Since that's even harder on Nerd, but also because these topics probably won't have them. And we're not really shaking up the entire genre with really anything that could happen between posting and now, I wouldn't have already said. So, in that case, we begin with magic systems. And we do have some corrections and updates to get to. So, first of all, to expound a bit more, you can, in fact, make your magic system be some highly advanced technology that you don't fully understand, so you make it up. That would also be technically a magic system. Also, there's an entire system I forgot to mention. Mana, or chi, which is pretty commonly used in manga, anime, and similar systems, where the magic doesn't need words or movements, but either just works or is based on you willing the effects into existence. And these magic systems require cultivation, training, meditation, and spiritual or magical breakthroughs to work. So, just in case you were worried that the mean podcast man told you that your favorite anime doesn't have magic, this mean podcast man that sounds exactly the same is telling you that it indeed does have magic. Also in the episode I said, please don't let Brandon Sanderson be evil. And so I looked into it. Nothing bad has come to light, but there are some vague, general, like, he has a past, and he said some weird shit type of stuff, and he is also Mormon, so if you know Mormons and whispers of, like, he has a past, that combination is really bad, so there's some genuine fear there. But just in case something comes up later, I had no idea. I did my due diligence. Anyways, on to something much less painful. I was also wrong in saying that you shouldn't have powers stronger than weaknesses. That's liberal pansy bullshit. If you really want to, you can have very powerful abilities with no drawbacks. You just gotta be very careful with that because it's easier to abuse and also harder to not use if you're doing a linear story. Okay, a much shorter explanation of the no-kill rule episode now. So, firstly, I'm not entirely convinced that my joke about treating people that hate femboys was entirely a joke. I know that slight tilt of sincerity in my voice, and oh man, it was certainly present. Also, legally, and I mean, being real, that is still a joke. Listening through the episode and really thinking about it, I came to two conclusions. First, I don't think most comics today would pass the muster of the Comics Code Authority, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. And also that I still really agree with Soapbox Me. As our heroes embrace killing more and more, the no-kill rule is really good to demonstrate that you don't have to hurt people to be the good guys. Also, I looked up that word that I couldn't pronounce in this episode, meretricious, which means looking attractive but actually being vulgar or gross, which in context basically means no gross nudity, which I don't think you really had to specify if you were already saying no nudity. You know, that would be like, I don't think anyone could ever make the case that, like, well, technically I didn't break the code because I use gratuitous nudity, not nudity. Okay, now to kill the planet. So, first of all, I wanted to backtrack. I said that might not be a good idea to write apocalypse fiction, but that's not true. History has shown that writing fiction about a topic does actually prevent some of the threats from happening, so go ahead and write that nuclear war story. Unless it's about AI, then people are going to call bullshit, and do the exact things that they do in every AI story. Also, the apocalypse genre is starting to see a resurgence because of the rise of fascism, this time it being about fascist regimes basically ending the world. Oh, and I learned that the reason why GW killed fantasy was not to make an example to us that we shouldn't question them, but because the game was making significantly less money than 40k and they tried to pin it on us with Storm of Chaos and then got salty when we didn't go for it. Also, Roko's Basilisk. Look it up right now. Do your part. Okay, we're going to talk about episode 24 now. Blood, Guts, Gore, and Tits. A confusing episode title, but ostensibly one about censorship and when to pull your punches. But I've actually used the tips I suggested to write better gore, and yeah, it's pretty effective. And also, not going to say anything about my Coffin, Vandy, and Lele comments. They make sense and are funny to me, damn it. Alright, and then 5-man bands, which funnily enough, I did on the 25th episode, which is 5 times 5. Did not do that intentionally. And this episode has a good number of tiny updates. So, firstly, a lot of the examples I gave were more group dynamics rather than 5-man bands. Don't hate me. But also, fuck off. Those can be groups of 5. And also, my examples of roles have some leeway. Especially with Atla, like how Sokka was an early Lancer, and you could call Zuko the Ranger/6th man. And you can also have your hero be a Ranger. Like the new Voltron cartoon did that, and it worked before the entire show went tits up because the ending sucked. And finally, I misspoke saying pentabyte, I meant petabyte, which is 1,000 terabytes. Which, for that joke about hentai, would mean that is a horrifying amount of porn you have on hand with you. 50 times the amount of porn than what exists on the entire internet right now. Which is insane. Super Suits is next with a repeat shout out to Cherry City Studios. I am still rocking the bumper sticker, by the way. The same one. It lasts a long time. But I had entirely forgotten about the point of brightly colored super suits being effective to draw attention away from civilians. And while it's not the real reason why it's done in comics, because, you know, color printing, it is a cool meta-analysis. And while it's not the real reason why it's done in comics, and I tried, but I can't find any evidence of Superman's trunks actually being based off of Jesse Owens. But it's really cool, and I'm accepting that into my own personal headcanon. Fair warning, though, no support at all for it. At least what I can find. Okay, anime tropes. A real fucking mess of an episode where my entire brain was just a hellscape for over an hour. Now, the first update is in regards to otaku. I said it like it was just an anime thing, which, if you're familiar with Japan and also anime, you know that's not true. Otaku is actually a Japanese subculture by caused by mostly young people dealing with their intense anxiety, trauma, or depression by becoming a shut-in that only games, watches anime, and doesn't socialize. And no, you are probably not an otaku. This is the result of intense stigma in regards to mental health and massive pressure on young people to survive. So, if you are an otaku, it is probably because of like mental health struggles and also a lot of the stigma and pressure put on you to do things and just kind of snapping. You are not an otaku if you spend 99% of your time inside because you like it. That's entirely different. Next is that I got the person who outsmoked Snoop Dogg wrong. It was Willie Nelson. I really didn't need to explain in the episode because it was a massive sidetrack, but getting the wrong white guy was really embarrassing. Expounding again, the blonde hair thing I was referencing was that in Japan and a lot of places in Asia, it's pretty common to fetishize women with blonde hair because they're exotic and foreign. Like how in the US, a lot of Asian women are fetishized. And seeing it as they're desirable in a part of the world where they aren't living and are instead visiting, that is a very dangerous proposition and it's scary. Speaking of which, we should really not be poking the incel bear with the whole antagonist attracted to the protagonist's waifu bit. That's a really bad idea to make your audience start thinking violence is okay against quote-unquote villains making moves on their quote-unquote woman. I said quote-unquote in the wrong place. You know what I mean. Incels are already very close to violence, and they don't need any help. That trope, though, is very useful to farm engagement, but you shouldn't be farming engagement in that way. There are better ways to do it that I talked about in that episode. Okay, now it's canon and meta time. So, for canon, first of all, there is some actual debate on what's the oldest piece of scripture. I chose the Kesh Temple hymn because it seemed to be purely religious, and in my opinion, probably part of a bigger work that we don't have anymore. But a lot of people will say it's the Epic of Gilgamesh, but I personally am not super convinced because folklore and storytelling feels a bit different from scripture, you know? Okay, also, I'm sure you'll be happy to know that I've become even more of a canon goblin in my own work and other people's because I'm so neurotic about my stuff maintaining canon. So, yes, I've become that nerd. Also, there's two things I want to expand on because they're just fucking silly. So you remember when I referred to the giant penny in the Batcave? Yeah, the reason why it stuck was because it was supposed to be a one-off gag, but the writing team and the art team thought it was funny and started to write stuff about how the penny could have possibly gotten in there, and they kept drawing in the Batcave because they thought it was hilarious, and their fans started to associate it with Batman, and now it's just kind of the Batman thing to have. So, yes, very silly and wholesome. The other thing was the two Human Torches, and one of them actually being Vision. So, in the original story, how it went was that when Ultron first made Vision, he used the body of the original Human Torch, an android, to do it. Now, what he didn't know is that the villain Immortus actually swapped it with a duplicate. This was retconned after the fact. Also, I don't know how Ultron didn't know, but whatever. So, why did he do this? Well, because Immortus was going to reveal that because Immortus was going to reveal that Vision isn't actually the Human Torch, so that the Avengers would then dig up the body and find the original. And what was his grand plan there? Well, because Scarlet Witch, who's married to Vision and has children with him, and also reality warping powers, would lose her grasp on reality, unimagine her kids out of existence because she imagined them into existence, go insane, and then give him time powers somehow. Yeah, that's really fucking weird, right? This entirely outrageous plan. Right? I know that's comic books for you. Anyways, on to the meta. So first of all, I need to do more intros like that. They're great and very creative. On a similar line of seriousness, I've heard that apparently 40k has the most xenophobic factions in a war game. Like, seriously, even other GW products, a lot of races will work together. Not in 40k, for some reason. Oh, also, because I mentioned Bao being down bad in that episode, no, I have not watched a full VTuber stream. I am just a weirdo. Although, that will change soon-ish, and I'll probably tell you why when it happens. But I do know that Bao continues to become hornier and hornier to a concerning degree. And if this somehow slides across her uncomfortably wet desk, hi? I mean, I like your model, and also you're pretty funny, and also, like I agree with the horniness. Okay, but more seriously, there's some more things I want to specifically call out about lamp shading. Firstly, like always, OSP did an awesome episode on this, and you should watch them. But second, lamp shading is usually, like, incredibly bad. It's usually pretty cringy, and shows your audience a lot of embarrassment about your work, and that you're unwilling to give your audience the thing that you're trying to give them. Which, comes across real wimpy. Okay, so on the Elf episode, we really need a Wet Willy Safari Adventure shirt. Honestly, I will try to get something like that into production eventually. It's feasible for me. If it's feasible for me to do merch at this point. If it's feasible for me to do merch at this moment. I mean, honestly, it's probably not. I mean, I could actually. I might be able to do some stuff. That's for, like, some personal musings. But a lot of the Elf episode was me forgetting things. From the deeply concerning joke I made about sex pest celebrities, P. Diddy mentioned, to calling Santa Claus a Dom bear, which, let me tell you, that sent me reeling for a full minute and a half, to forgetting all about the racism that could be attached to elves, and also that D&D had a way bigger impact in the popularity of elves than GW ever did, and ever will. Don't know what kind of crack I was smoking there. Also, pour one out for the Dungeon Cast. They ended abruptly recently, and I am still not over it. And after this episode came out, a very good example of elf lifespans came about. Furin. I have not had to pronounce that out loud before. Which, in addition to being a great, if not somber, show, demonstrates a very cool way to do elves that isn't normally done. Elves don't care about the passage of years, because they don't have to. Like how she decides to just write out a several-year prison sentence, or doesn't care about waiting at the border essentially indefinitely because she has time to wait. Oh, and me talking about my intelligence this episode was not a humble brag. It was meant to be a demonstration and be honest with myself. Sorry if you got caught in the crossfire of my own mental illness. I don't have any updates for Punk, so let's just go directly over to Cringe. Hey, welcome to Cringe. You've been here the whole time. First things first, yes, that meme reference entry was pointed at the Dragon Prince. I could not finish that show because they added fucking flossing. Also, while I claimed I didn't see Purple Prose too much, I've since been absorbing more and more horror, and Purple Prose is a massive issue in horror. It almost immediately takes me out of it because the author is so up their own ass about it. Quirky and relatable losers also instantly take me out of it. Because I end up getting copied by awkward weirdos, thinking it's the cheat code for free genitalia. Spoilers, it's not. Just be weird. As long as it's not incel weird. If you're quirky or bizarre, you'll find your tribe, and there will be people throwing themselves at you genital first. Trust me. I also want to reiterate again that every writer has their cringe era. Yes, me too. It's because when you reach a certain level, you decide to be a quote-unquote serious writer, before you realized that the thing that made your writing good was the way you approached it, but you just needed the experience to go along with that. In the application section, when I talked about fixing edgelords, I should have brought up the Punisher, because that is the edgiest edgelord to ever exist. And you know how Marvel fixed that? They made him embarrassing and hated by literally the entire universe, and the only person that thinks he's a hero is himself in his own stories. And even then, he gets called out constantly. Also, like, he kind of hates himself, but that's reasonable because he's the fucking Punisher. He should. Also, my lighting a cigarette with a gun joke is even funnier because it is literally impossible. It's been tested, and that's not how guns work. So, that example. Well, so like that joke, what that was an analogy for, even better. Yeah, because no one who knows how guns work is ever going to try that. Anyone who knows how writing works is not going to try to write a cringy character and fix them. And when you're giving a boring protagonist something weird to be interested in, don't make it a sex thing, you fucking perv. Because now we're regressing in the levels of cringe. Make them into flowers, not sniffing the armpit of every muscular woman in the world, even if that's your hobby. And finally, there's a fifth way to do a villainous mentor that I didn't mention. Reveal that the whole time they were the bad guy, / the big bad, and the reason why they trained the hero was in hopes they'd see their wisdom become weakened by respect and love, or to corrupt them in some way. Any of that works. You can have a villainous mentor that was just a bastard the whole time. Alright, we are almost done. Satire. So again, a massive shout out to Piper's Cafe because this was the episode I got outed on. To clarify something I said about parody, satire, and burlesque, is that the lines between them don't just seem blurred. They are actually blurred. This is because not only of their similarities, but because there are a few different genre tools for your narrative toolbox and can exist in the same setting pretty often and pretty easily. So you don't have to worry about trying to separate them out too much. It's just important to know the difference so that when you are targeting one of those at something, you're not accidentally insulting someone or just saying something with no teeth. In the history section, I did some research and it turns out that Al-Yahiz was correct. I also did not look up how to pronounce his name. I was going to say Al-Yahiz because that sounds vaguely correct. Which actually explains why I liked we learn better from personal stories, humor, satire, and sarcasm than we do from dry fact. Which actually explains why I liked the teachers I liked in high school, and also why I love college so much. People with an interest in the field they teach always put that level of passion into it, and people with an interest in the field they teach always put that level of passion into it that helps you to learn from it. Also, I looked into what tribe Muhammad was from, and yes, it was the Quraysh. I also wanted to bring up the racism stuff in the current section. Basically, in those shows and in the book, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, the characters are the most racist. They're usually in the wrong and are very easy to disagree with. And also are usually kind of an asshole. And usually over the course of the episode or series, they often, they either soften up or get progressively more bitter until they eventually get rid of them. The whole way being shown constantly that they're in the wrong and dumb. And yes, Huck Finn has a lot of racism that's played straight, but also undermines the racism played straight, and also from a metatextual context, Mark Twain is calling out racists for being dumb, uneducated, and wrong. And also the characters that grow in the story and become not nearly as racist, yeah, those are the ones who are the good guys. Huck Finn himself becomes less racist over the course of the story. I'm not going to say not racist, because it's the 1800s. I don't know what you're expecting out of a child raised in the South in the 1800s, but less racist. Also, the writer of American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis, is gay, maybe? He doesn't like sexual orientation labels, but he has also said some homophobia and is characterized in places as a self-hating gay. So probably not a queer icon, but still funny that the books and movies propped up by the true alpha male homophobic material are men who are at the very least not straight. And then when I got to Babel, I forgot that I found a random technobabble generator. Oh boy, I am sorry you had to listen to that. Since, it is necessary material. Actually, kidding. There's absolutely zero lore building. I lied to you in that episode. So after some more research, I think a computer could need something to control gyroscopic forces if it's something meant to be on the go and is also very fragile. But I feel like there's better equipment for that. Also, gyroscopic isn't a force. It's measuring motion, so it's probably going to be something that should be moving. But anyways, as far as the laziness of Technobabble goes, I think we creatives do have a hand in that more than what I let on in the episode. We should really just be trying to understand some basic science and knowing what we're talking about instead of just pulling up a random generator like an asshat. Speaking of being an asshat, I might have overplayed the misinformation angle, as important as I think it is. But fair if you thought this section was entirely overblown. Some people need to have that fear to write better stories. Also, I think that Sheldon Cooper has done massive and irreparable damage to nerddom and nerd culture despite trying to celebrate it. Oh, and finally for this episode, both Astro and Cosmo are Greek. Cosmo refers to the natural order of the world and things, while Astro refers to stars. So, right track, wrong answer. Alright, and then finally, fight scenes. Yes, I have indeed been cursed by the Vantage Ball trope. Whenever I remember it, I scream at the screen in pure unfiltered agony, as every battle scene ever has been ruined for me. Including my favorite ones, the Lord of the Rings series battles. That's some real childhood nostalgia I have ruined for myself. I also got a historical fact wrong on a technicality. So while no conflict has ever been won from a single person's actions, a lot have been lost. Not locking the gates, assassinations mid-battle, people forgetting key strategic features, dumb choices that create new strategic features, or just being too much of an asshole and their friends turn on them. Or, yeah, there is also the example that I've given a few times of, like, during the Civil War, firing off the, cannon battery at the Union Fort probably lost the South the entire war from the first shot. There's all the ways that a single person fucks up for everyone. I've also learned that the shoot at it more strategy can kind of work. So, for example, let's say a tank. A lot of bullets won't kill a tank. What it will do is force the crew to keep their heads down while damaging external sensors, puncturing external supplies, and getting stuck in external gearworks on the tracks, and maybe the turret, depending on how much space is there. Probably not, but it could get caught in the tracks, which could all cause some pretty good damage and or effectively remove the tank from the fight, because they're not just going to fight blind. But again, that's not a strategy to use. That is an act of desperation. Speaking of acts of desperation that no one would ever suggest, the total lack of any kind of aerial combat in fantasy just pisses me off. For real, I fucking hate it, and I would love to see more settings take that into account. It is so potentially cool. Okay, finally, after looking into it, the reason why grenades can be cooked in video games is because in video games, to make them fair, you can toss them back. So this mechanic was created to make it harder to avoid. In real life, grenades are meant to disrupt formations and get people to move, not to kill. Well, I mean, they do kill, but that's the threat. If you don't get out of the way, you'll die. So they're intentionally not easy to see. Meaning most militaries don't teach soldiers to cook grenades or toss them back, instead to try to get out of the blast radius. Because no one is going to be fast enough to get to the grenade, pick it up, have the presence of mind to throw it back, and then toss it before it blows up. And if you've ever read a story of someone doing that, they are either, one, extremely lucky, or two, extremely stupid, or three, they're the most level-headed, cool, brave person to ever exist. And if they are still alive, someone needs to take care of them because that's a dangerous human being. Okay, and we're going to call it there. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for listening in so far, reminiscing a bit with me, even if this is part of your core order therapy plan. Which, if it is, you need to sue the state. This isn't helping you. See you in the conclusion. All right, and there we are. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. I mean, not just to this episode, but to any of the episodes that you've listened to. It does mean the world to me. And it is amazing to have just so many. I mean, at this point, it's like 10 people, but still 10 people that found this show without like any kind of advertising. So I just thank you so much. But anyways, if you have opinions, advice on how to make the show better, updates I missed, where you freaks find femboys, and really anything else you want to tell me, make sure to email me at waytatpods@gmail.com. That's waytatpods@gmail.com. And remember to check out my other podcast, Waytat, where I do basically the same thing, but with politics and everything else fuck you in America. Also, remember to follow me on Twitter at waytat_pods for more episode announcements. I also got a Blue Sky before working on this episode. So also follow me on Blue Sky. It's Waytat Pods, all one word. But yeah, follow me for more episode announcements and sometimes some shit posts. But yeah, have a good night. Don't murder. Have fun. And remember, everything I say is a joke and is not admissible in a court of law. This has been Why Are You Talking About This? And I've been your host, William. Good night.